Here's how I turn any book into immediate action using AI and Claude. Let's dive into it. All right, so what I want to show you today is essentially my little tool that I've built within Claude to summarize a book and to give you a bit more insight in how how the process works that I do right now. Essentially, I read a book, I make notes, I make markings with like a text marker or a highlighter, I think is what it's called. And then afterwards, I go through and I use this little tool that I made with a system prompt that I'll put into the description, either directly or maybe as a document link or something to a Notion doc. And I go through every chapter and I use the app, the iOS app for Claude. And I essentially just, talk about all the stuff that I see, going through the pages chapter by chapter, speaking into the microphone and giving it all my insights and learnings, both from what the notes that I made and then also the markings or the highlights. And then at the end, it will generate a summary for me of the book. But then I can also go in, and that's where the action part comes in, and I can say, give me a system prompt that I can use to, for example, for this book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, give me a system prompt that lets me create a strategy, which I have done here. Create a system prompt for an AI that I want to ask to walk me through all the questions and steps and spits out a good strategy. Also, the user should be able to include sections beyond the kernel, like a leverage and don't do list. So the kernel is part of the book. Good strategy, bad strategy is like the three parts that need to be in it for sure. And then everything else is like, added on based on the situation. And what it does is spits out your strategic planning assistant. So essentially, I use AI to generate another AI prompt tool that I have used in another Claude project that I'm going to show you now. And that is a strategy creator that I use for essentially creating strategies for each product that we have. And I did an example here where I wanted to show you how it works for a YouTube channel, for example. So essentially you start chatting with it and then ask you questions, which I think is one of the best use cases for AI right now, just as a brainstorming help and asking questions that are often not obvious and you wouldn't ask yourself. And I think that's one of the key leverages, at least that I see for AI right now and for these Claude projects. And then, it keeps asking follow-up questions. So essentially you can go on with this as long as you want. But for the sake of showing you how it works, I just went in and said, hey, draft a strategy for me. And then this essentially is the exact structure that's recommended from the book summary that I turn into a system prompt, right? So essentially I turn the book into an AI tool to help me apply what's in the book. And I think that is like super, super powerful. And I've been doing it now for strategy. And I've also been doing it now for another book that's called the Bezos Blueprint. So essentially communication strategies, how to draft written communication, because that's another area I want to improve in. So essentially I pick areas that I think I need improvement in. And I go in, I get some books, I collect all the context, and then I create myself tools to apply them, because I think that's the best way to make it stick. And what's also nice, if you don't just read the book, but you highlight in the book, and then you go in and you read again, and you read your highlights, and you speak it. That's another sense, or another thing that gets involved in like repeating the content. And then action, I think, is where it really sticks. And because I created the system prompt not to do my work, but I said, hey, just walk me through the questions I have to ask. So I still have to do the work, but it kind of guides me. I think that makes it like super, super good in remembering the book and the content and, just to get it on the street. And I think you can apply the same process for everything, if it's a podcast or anything that has some sort of framework in it that you think is useful to exercise. It's very, very useful for that. And you can use the exact same process. Just, it's probably even faster because you can just plop in the whole podcast transcript or article or whatever, and then just turn that into a system prompt as well in the same way. And you can always come back and ask it questions and you can add things. And I've done that essentially with every kind of strategy here where, for example, for our Bridesmaid for Hire, I spent a lot of time, you can see here where it's yeah, I can scroll around a bit. Essentially, I don't know, hours and hours and hours of context, of learnings, of things I've learned in the last 18 months. And then I can always come back and ask questions until it explodes, which hasn't happened yet. But I'll probably run out of context at some point, which then I'll go in and I will make it extract 3 or 4 different things. And then I'll put these 3 or 4 different things as project context for another project. And then I can continue. But yeah, hope any of the stuff interesting, maybe gave you some ideas what tools to build for yourself or how to, make your next book read more actionable. And yeah, feel free to stick around, subscribe, whatever makes sense. And I'll see you next time. Alrighty. Cheers.